Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Finally Feel Free event. Today, I have a really special guest, Stephanie Shea. She is an astrologer and writer from Portland, Oregon, and from 2012 to mid 2016, Stephanie had the great honor of working for and studying under internationally renowned astrologer Jan Spiller. And when Jan passed in July 2016, Stephanie continued writing forecasts and articles for janspiller.com, which was Jan's wish. She also specializes in birth chart readings with a focus on the North Node, a point in an individual's birth chart that can help unlock their potential and purpose. Stephanie is currently co-authoring Jan's final book titled Awakening the Soul's Purpose, North Node Astrology Through the Houses. This upcoming book is a companion book to Jan Spiller's best-selling book, Astrology for the Soul, which I also own and love. Jan began writing this new book before her passing and left notes so that it could be completed and published. And Stephanie has diligently been working on finishing this book for years, using Jan's notes as a guide. And as of August 2024, she is on the final chapter of the book and is anticipating publication in late 2025 through Citrine Publishing. So, Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for talking with me and having me here.
It's so good to have you. And for those of, us that don't know, I mean, I know about astrology. I'm not an expert, but I do love astrology, and I know many of us in the audience do. But for those of you who don't know, can you just explain what the North and South Node is?
Absolutely. They are actually mathematical points in the sky. So that's the part that blows my mind sometimes. They're not even an actual body like the moon, but they are related to the moon because they're the points, whereas the Earth and the moon are orbiting the sun, the moon's orbit intersects that orbit. There's some really good diagrams online that show this, but these points have proven through time, Jan didn't invent this concept, to be very powerful points in a birth chart. And astrologically, the North Node represents what's going to work well for you in this lifetime, what energies flow more smoothly. The South Node may feel like very familiar energies because they're known to be things that you brought in from your past life. So you may have some natural talents, but often a lot of the South Node traits were overdone and need to be rebalanced. You can have too much of something. All the zodiac signs function really well and then function kind of in a bad way when somebody is stressed and not in balance. And so the whole idea is to use the North Node energy to help balance the out of balance South Node traits that we've brought in.
Mhm. Okay, and then can we go through the North Node through all the houses? I mean, people can find where their North Node is by going on a birth chart calculator, putting in their time of birth and all of that, and you'll see, in Vedic astrology, it's like Rahu, Ketu, so RA, and then in obviously Western astrology, it will just say, I think, North Node. I guess.
Yes, North Node and South S. You might see NN or SN, but yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. So well, why don't we start where I have mine? Because I'm just gonna, indulge for a minute. So
Yes.
I have my North Node in the eighth house.
Okay. Well, this house is a lot about merging your energies with other. The eighth house is often associated with Scorpio themes. So that's intimacy, that can be shared finances. And it's also kind of beyond the tangible. It's psychic, intuition. Some people say the occult. So it's a rich house. It's one of those areas that I say it's what people don't like to talk about at dinner parties: sex, death, taxes,
Yeah.
debt. So when you think of those kind of energies, no matter what sign your North Node is in, we're kind of blending the eighth house environment. When you immerse yourself in activities, for example, what you're doing, spiritual activities, things that activate your intuition, that's going to feel more on path. The South Node is in the second house if you have an eighth house north node. Second house is very much about your own resources, your self-worth. You can see that, that's a great area of life. But when I consider, well, what could have gotten out of balance? Maybe you had too much to yourself that you weren't able to share your life with others. You can feel like an island sometimes with a south node in the second. And so it can sometimes feel, oh, it's just easier for me to do this on my own, and maybe even have trust issues that somebody is going to try to take what's yours. I don't know if any of that has ever happened in your life, but those are some of the big themes for those houses.
Yeah. And when you have your north node, does that mean that that is what you should go towards, or that it doesn't mean that it's always pulling you towards those things, whatever you do?
Sometimes you have to make some effort to get to the north node energy, because I think the south node feels so familiar. You've already done it, and you may just think this is how it's done, and not realize there's a different approach. And so once you realize that there's a different way of doing things that could maybe unblock things that have been blocking you, it
Mm.
opens doors. So with the example of the eighth house, again, trying to merge your energy with others, collaborations, opening yourself up to be vulnerable to intimate partnership, not trying to do it all yourself. That is actually going to lead to success with your North Node house placement.
Mm. So what about, let's go backwards now. What about your north node in the seventh house?
Yes. So seventh house would be also a partnership oriented lifetime. But I do want to clarify that everybody is open to partnership. I get people really worried that they think, oh, I guess I'm one of those people that's never meant to have a partner. And I don't believe that. It's how you do partnership, though. And
Mm.
so with the North Node in the seventh, it's a very collaborative style. It takes a lot of listening to what the other person is saying, because if your South Node is in the first house, that would be the opposite of the seventh. You come from a lifetime of pretty much fending for yourself and maybe not having to have listened to anybody else. Maybe you were the one calling more of the shots. And so that can put an obstacle to partnership, and you don't even realize why, that you're coming across, as kind of bossy or in charge, and the other person doesn't feel listened to. So it's these communication skills and partnership skills that are being learned. And once you start leaning into that, everything starts to flow.
Hmm. And what about if it's in the sixth house?
Sixth house has to do with daily work, health, and wellness. And I think you really want to focus on the details of life, organizing your schedule, keeping what you're putting into your body and mind, being very mindful about these things, because the South Node was in the 12th house, which is more of a spiritual environment. And there's nothing wrong with that, except for sometimes that takes you so far out of your daily life. Maybe you're forgetting to eat, or what was on your calendar to do for the day. So you're rebalancing that by having more structure in your life. That's going to help. You can still be a very spiritual person with North Node in the sixth, but it's going to come through in more of a practical way.
Mm, yeah, and it's really interesting to see because the opposite houses always kind of balance each other out. Like the sixth is about daily life routine, but then the 12th is about spirituality. So wherever these nodes go, it's like that balancing effect as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because you don't want to abandon everything that was done in your past life. Potentially, there's good things there, but it could be the area of life where things went wrong because they were too out of balance. So this is why it'd be very good for somebody, maybe if they are going to meditate, put it on the calendar at a certain time every day, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay, great. Can we run through the other ones like fifth, fourth? Yeah.
Yes. So fifth house is representative of the areas of life with romance, creativity, relationship with children, anything that is a lot of joy and fun. It's one of the most fun parts of the chart. So if you have your North Node in the fifth, that's a fun mission, right? Perhaps what was happening is that you're losing yourself in the crowd, in your other lifetime, because the opposite of the fifth is the 11th, which is about groups, community. It's the house of bigger picture dreams, but if it gets out of balance, you're losing yourself. When we think about the fifth house, it's a Leo energy. And so this has to do with letting yourself shine through and not trying to blend in with everybody else.
Mhm. Okay, great. Fourth?
Fourth house is house of home and family. And this is also your emotional center, emotional security. And this is where you want to be putting your energy. If this is where your North Node is, it doesn't mean you have to physically start a family if that's not up your alley, but making it feel as if you have roots and people in your life who are like family, having emotional security, worldly accomplishments can kind of follow. Because in a past life, if your South Node was in the 10th house, which is the career house, you may have sacrificed family relationships at the expense of your career. So you kind of want to rebalance that now. And yes, you can be ambitious and have a profession, but you're not going to feel as successful if you don't have a happy inner world.
And if we flip that around, because it might be easier to do it this way, if we flip it around and say North Node in 10th house.
Right. So this is, you can imagine the reverse scenario. This person is learning more about going out into the world and building a name for themselves. The 10th house is public image as well as career. If their South Node was in the fourth, perhaps they were too dependent on their family in a past life. And a lot of times this stuff gets carried through into this life. So some people may say, that's what happened to me as a kid,
Exactly.
so the family was maybe controlling or something. And what's going to help them feel more confident and move through life more easily is for them to take charge in their professional life.
Interesting. What about the North Node in the 3rd house?
The third house has so much to do with communication, learning. It's all about your thought processes. So it's very mental headspace, but in a practical way. It's also has a lot in common with the sixth house as far as taking care of day-to-day routines. So you definitely want to be somebody who's focused on making connections, on keeping track of all the things in your life and learning, constantly learning something new. If you had your South Node in the ninth, you might have been more of the teacher in a past life. You perhaps don't always keep your mind open to learning new things, which can block you. So it's not surprising if these people do have natural teaching skills, but they also need to be a student.
And then what if it's reversed? So North Node in the 9th house and South Node in the 3rd.
Right. I feel that these folks maybe got too caught up in other people's business. If you think of the third house as almost chit chat and it's that friendly talk that you have with your neighbors, this is an important aspect of life. We all want to feel connected. But if you are too socially busy and it's detracting from your times to feel peaceful, to feel spiritual, and to learn things that you want to learn, taking up too much headspace, with other people's business, then I think that would be a big mission. Ninth house is a bit more of a solitary area of the chart. So I think of people who enjoy travel and retreats and stepping back to see the big picture.
Hmm. So we covered North Node in the 8th house. So let's just do North Node in the 2nd.
The second, absolutely. That one has to do with your finances, pretty much that you earn yourself. The eighth house is shared finance, but second house would be any resources that you yourself are able to gather. And it does rule your self-worth as well. So these folks are learning how to manage their own resources and acquire them. Perhaps they were more of a kept man or woman in a past life, and this is their time to feel more confident that they can earn what they need for themselves on their own. And then when they have a partner, great, that's icing on the cake, but they're not depending on anyone else to take care of them.
Hmm. Okay. And then North Node in the first house?
First house is all about the self. So it's really self-knowledge. There's a bit of self-confidence involved, body awareness. And so that's opposite the seventh house of partnership. I would say those folks in a past life probably got too enmeshed in their
Mm,
partnership and really didn't even know who they were or what they wanted. So North Node and the first people do really well when they do spend a bit of time alone, feel into their body, and decide what's right for them without being influenced too much by other people.
okay. And then 12th?
12th house is all about, like, as we were saying earlier, spirituality, the subconscious, dreams. It can, yeah, it can really feel like a almost a religious space, but you can use it practically. So if you have the 12th house north node, you probably also need some solitude. There's houses that are more social and ones that are more reflection oriented. And the 12th is definitely about connecting with a higher power and thinking about what you are intuiting, what messages you're getting, because the sixth house, where the south node is a
Mm,
very busy place. It's our work, it's all the things that run through our minds that are
mm,
important. Don't forget to pay the power bill, don't forget this.
mm,
But if that's overactive and you don't have a chance to feel at peace, it's going to create anxiety. There's
mm,
often anxiety issues with people with North Node in the 12th, and so their mission is to cultivate inner peace.
mhm. And then lastly, 11th, because we've done every other one. Yeah.
Yes, 11th, and this one's mine, and it was also Jan Spiller's. So this is a big picture area of the chart because it's communities, it's groups. It does have to do with friendship, and Jan also calls it the House of Angels, which I really like. So you're kind of service in a spiritual way, and you're trying to do something that's going to benefit a large amount of people. If your south node is in the fifth, your past life was probably all about you in some way, and you didn't have to consider others, or maybe you didn't have the opportunity to do that if people were putting you on a pedestal or something. So 11th house is finally time to be more among humanity, not isolated from them, and do something that can reach a wide audience. And so I think this is one of the things that probably called Jan to be an author.
Yeah, I love that. And just going back to, because you mentioned that we have to do a bit of work to get to wherever our North Node is. So what can we do to start connecting with the North Node? Is it that we just focus our attention on that area of life? Is it that we balance out the North and the South? Like, how can we start connecting with that energy?
Right. This is such a good question. When we're thinking of houses, we are thinking of areas of life, activities that go along with that area of life. So if we were looking at 11th house, we would think spending time with friends is actually quite important. These people are giving information about humanity, how we can help the world just through their example of being a good friend, of things that we notice about them. It's definitely important. And other areas of life. So we mix the sign and the house, and sometimes at first they seem contradictory, but there's always a way to drill down and see, okay, how could this work? If somebody had Leo North Node in the 11th, for example, that's opposite energy.
Mm,
You're thinking, aren't I supposed to shine and be noticed? But 11th is saying, don't get noticed too much.
mm,
Well, the idea would be that you do your work to be of service, and the byproduct is probably shining, but you just can't really make your ego the main
mhm,
focus.
mm,
Something like that. You really have to kind of, and this is why, I love working on this book, because it makes you think about, okay, how can I balance this? Things aren't as cookie cutter as you might think they are. You really have to customize to your sign and your house.
mm. And then coming back to the South Node, is that something, that you've obviously probably had that easily in your past life. But people also say you get wherever your south node is quite easily in this life as well. Even though you might not be focused on it, it's because you've experienced it in a past life. You are able to bring it in with less effort. Do you agree?
I think sometimes if it was something that went well, it's
Yeah.
like when I think about everything that could go wrong with a particular sign or area of life, it's doubtful that somebody had every single thing go wrong. Some things were maybe
Mm,
working for them, and those would be the gifts that could continue to work for them. But if they did not learn a lesson about something and they need to come back and redo, then it could feel very uncomfortable when they do an activity or a behavior, shall we say,
mhm,
associated with the South Node. You know, if
mm,
somebody has the second house south node and they're obsessed with money and hoarding, and that's not going well for them. But maybe they're good in other second house areas, like they have a lot of self-confidence.
Yeah, I can really agree with, having my South Node in the second house. Like, I'm not really money orientated. It's more that I'm looking at other types of wealth because I genuinely feel like I've had that before. Like, it's that really kind of strong feeling, and the self-confidence piece is kind of up and down because you've had it before, but it's like a re-establishing it in this life. Like, it's familiar, but you need to kind of rewrite it. So that kind of energy, yeah. So when it comes to like conjunctions, so like other planets are being with your north node, it does your north node amplify that planet? What happens? Because obviously there's so many planets we can talk about, but just
Right. Yes, I feel that it's almost the other way around where the planet is amplifying the north node. It's sort of a helpful energy. And when you lean into the energy of that planet, let's say it was Pluto, well, that's a pretty deep planet. You're not going to be able to skim the surface with Pluto. And especially if that was happening in your eighth house, that would be a big help because Pluto represents all the eighth house themes of looking beneath the surface and seeing what needs to be healed or addressed. So the planets next to the south node, Jan always said, represent what people did not get to do in a past
mm,
life. So if they had
mhm,
Venus next to the south node, maybe they were unable to have a fulfilling relationship.
mhm,
So this is something they're coming back to work on.
mm. And what about in synastry, like when your north node falls on another person's kind of, major planet?
This is a big deal. And Jan wrote a book called Cosmic Love, and it's all about that. And it talks about what house someone's north node falls in your chart and vice versa, and also these planetary connections. Generally, north node connections are very, very positive. This is
Mhm.
you're already moving into the future and working together on something that's going to go well. South node is a little trickier. It doesn't mean the relationship can't work, but there's something to be worked out from a past
Mhm.
life. You probably knew each other and may push each other's buttons at first because you're starting to activate the old patterns.
Yeah, but you can work through it. Does it suck the energy of that planet? So, for example, if say your south node falls on someone's Mars, does it suck that energy of
A
the?
little bit, yeah. I don't know if you've read Cosmic Love, but it would kind of the South Node person. Jan always said they're generally the bad guy. And in a past life, they did something to hinder the Mars person's ambition, like kind of,
Okay.
squashed it and oppressed them. And so sometimes in this life, it can come across as if they're also, not supporting that person when they have an ambition.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to be worked out so they can help that person achieve their goals this time around.
So having that awareness, can you just like make conscious efforts, or is it more of a thing that just plays out until you both get to a mutual agreement?
I I think it takes conscious effort, and I know Jan did as well. She has really practical tips in her
Mm-hmm.
book Cosmic Love, to kind of flip the script if things are feeling tense. And in that Mars example, I don't have it perfectly memorized, but it would be something like reminding the Mars person about their strengths and helping them, not being discouraging to them when they're trying to pursue something that they're excited about.
Yeah, because it might just feel all too familiar and the person might not even know why.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's great. And then you also have a really great free gift, which is the 2025 Sun Sign Prediction Report for all 12 signs. And is that just for 2025 or is it worth knowing about that from now?
You could start, I mean, it's just for 2025, but if you want to get a head start, I mean, it's only a few
Exactly, it's
months
next year.
away.
Yeah.
Um, it's
Yeah.
a really practical report. It's going to cover love, finances, career, and health for outlook for the year ahead, based on what the planets, especially the outer planets, are going to
Mm.
be doing in relationship to your sun.
Fantastic. So we'll put that down below as well as your links, which is www.janspiller.com,
Filler.com.
Instagram, Jan Spiller Astrology, Facebook, Jan Spiller Astrology, and also Stephanie Shea Astrology.com as well. We'll put all those links down below. And I just want to really thank you for this. Yeah, you went really, really worked hard going through all the houses. So I appreciate that information for all of us today.
Oh, I love it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. It's one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, thank you so much.